𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵 packed her suitcase early in the morning and, as she stepped out the door, she left behind a safe and peaceful world. When she left home for a business trip out of town, she thought everything was ordinary. Her marriage with Chris had become a habit over the years. Everything had fallen into place. Their love for each other sometimes faded, sometimes grew intense, but it was always there. The life they shared within the four walls of their home alongside their dog Max had become, in 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵's mind, both a monotonous routine and a comforting refuge. When Chris was home alone, he carried on with his usual routine. He devoted time to his job, to their dog, and, as always, to house chores. His relationships with the neighbors were always friendly, but for the past 2 weeks, a new neighbor, Melissa, had been knocking on the door. She had just moved in and was extremely warm and outgoing. Chris and Melissa quickly became friends. Their conversations, a few shared dinners, and mutual interests had pleased 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵. Yet, deep inside, something whispered to her that this friendship could be more than just that. A woman always had to be careful, right? 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵's business tree cycle, treasure. Once her work in the city was complete, she decided to return home. She wanted to surprise Chris. At that moment, her mind was filled with different thoughts, perhaps rekindling romance, rediscovering their lost bond. She was excited as she made her way home. Before knocking on the door, she wanted to enter quietly, imagining Chris's surprised and delighted expression. The idea of reconnecting, just like in the early days, thrilled her. Memories of their laughter, deep conversations, and affectionate moments played in her mind like scenes from a film. Yet, along with these memories, an unsettling feeling crept in. Would Chris and 𝗓𝗂𝗴𝗵𝗁 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗂𝗓 used to? Lately, she had sensed a growing distance between them. Could she still find the passion she once saw in his eyes? Or would this journey reveal something new to her? The air was cool, and the silence of the evening spread through the streets. When she reached her doorstep, she hesitated for a moment. Taking a deep breath, she slowly opened the door. Everything looked normal. The living room was tidy. Max was sleeping in his usual spot. Soft music drifted from inside. She knew that Chris loved listening to music while reading, but something was off. Something was different. A glass of wine sat on the kitchen counter, and candles, the kind Chris often lit, flickered gently. A strange unease stirred inside her, a feeling she couldn't quite describe. She walked cautiously, moving down the hallway. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Inside, she could hear whispers, laughter. Her heart began to race. At first, she thought she had misheard, but the uneasiness within her grew stronger. A strange, unfamiliar sound came from the bedroom, making her pause. Carefully, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. Her eyes widened. In the dimly lit room, just a few steps away, stood Chris and Melissa. She was in shock. Melissa, dressed in a silk nightgown, stood close to Chris in a way that suggested more than just physical closeness. It was an emotional connection. Both of them froze when they saw 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵 standing there. 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵 silently observed them. Her eyes, filled with disbelief, soon glistened with tears as the weight of betrayal settled in. In that moment, she realized the trust she had nurtured for years had completely shattered. Chris's gaze reflected guilt, while Melissa's expression quickly turned to shame. "How could you do this?" 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵's voice trembled. "How could you do this to me?" Chris was momentarily speechless. The years they had shared, the memories, the dreams they had built together. None of it could shield 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵 from the pain of this moment. Chris looked at her with regret and guilt. Melissa took a step back, stunned. Everything had happened so quickly that she could no longer discern what was right or wrong. But 𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗵, recalling the love they had once promised each other, simply stared at the void between them. Had everything truly changed? Images of the past flashed through her mind: vacations, special occasions, the way Chris once looked at her with love. But did any of it matter anymore? Or had they already crossed the point of no return? Suddenly, she felt a sense of clarity. No matter what, her life was about to take a completely different path. Malia questioned her place in this home, in this relationship, in this bond. She knew she had loved Chris, but had she truly built a real connection with him? And Melissa, did she really want to be in her place? Taking a deep breath, Malia let the anger, pain, and disappointment wash over her. Yet, at the same time, she saw an opportunity to reshape her life on her own terms. "There's no point in this," she said calmly. "Now, you both know how I feel." Without another word, she closed the door behind. "This doesn't make sense. Now you know how I feel," said Malia, her voice patient and calm. Suddenly, she decided to close the door and leave the house. As she walked away, step by step, one question kept echoing in her mind. What should she do now? For a few weeks, Malia tried to pull herself together. After the betrayal she had experienced, she had fallen into a void. She spent her days walking, reading books, and being alone with herself. But life went on, and she had to hold on to it again. One day, while sitting in a cafe, she noticed a man at the table next to hers looking at her. The man was tall, dark-haired, and had a warm smile. When their eyes met for a moment, he slightly nodded to greet her. At first, Malia wanted to ignore it. But a voice inside her told her it was time for a new beginning. The man's name was Daniel. He was a writer and a traveler who had visited many countries throughout his life. As their conversation deepened, Malia felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Daniel's desire to explore life inspired Malia. As the days went by, they began spending more time together, drinking coffee, walking on the beach, and sharing their life stories. Daniel was slowly mending the cracks in Malia's heart. One day, Daniel suggested traveling together. "Why don't you start fresh?" he asked. "Sometimes the best way to escape the shadow of the past is to create new memories." Malia thought for a long time. She thought about Chris and Melissa, the pain, the betrayal, and the loneliness that followed. But then she saw the new door Daniel was offering her. Maybe she really needed a change. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. "Yes," she said. "It's time for a new journey." And so, Malia packed her suitcase again. But this time, not to run away from the past, but to look forward to the future with hope.